The World Bank comes out with this list of the top 400 or 500. The USA ports are not hardly ever in the top 100.
That's Mario Cordero, CEO of the Port of Long Beach in California, America's second busiest port. It ranks number 9 in the world in level of activity, but number 373 in the list he refers to, the World Bank's annual Container Port Performance Index, which measures efficiency based on how long a ship stays in port. That index for 2023 ranked Yangshan, China, Salalah, Oman, and Cartagena, Colombia first, second, and third. The only U.S. ports that made the top 100 were Philadelphia at 55 and New York, New Jersey at number 92. Of the bottom 50 ports listed, 6 of them are in the U.S., making America's shipping infrastructure exceptional in the length of its delays. Turlock Mooney is the global head of port intelligence and analytics at S&P Global, which partnered with the World Bank to create the efficiency ranking.
Ports are critical to fluid supply chains. Efficient ports are extremely necessary to keep goods flowing smoothly. Efficient ports are actually catalysts for development. They attract investment, they attract logistics infrastructure, and they ultimately help to drive growth. Conversely, inefficient ports can have the opposite effect.
Time, as they say, is money. And when it comes to United States imports, it can be a lot of money, given the importance of consumers, which makes ports like Long Beach an indicator of the strength of the economy overall.
You have a great economy, and the American consumer is spending. In terms of Port of Long Beach, our numbers lately have been historic. So we're approximating now, after 9 months, we're up in terms of TEU volume. We're up about 19% over and above last year's number.
To handle all that volume, ports like Cordero's Long Beach have been changing the way they do business, trying to make sure that they're as efficient as they can be, improving that low ranking in the World Bank Index. And some of that requires automation.
The research right now points to the fact that automation clearly is a cost reduction policy. For the Port of Long Beach, we're interested in productivity. As a global community, we've entered the fourth industrial revolution, so to speak, and that is the coming of robotics, automation. If you go back to a report that McKinsey issued back in 2017, they predicted that by 2030, we would lose 2/3 of American jobs as we know. For every robot that you put in place, there's 6 jobs that are eliminated. So I think for the Port of Long Beach, how we navigate that issue, as a public port, we have to consider all factors. And I think what we've been successful at, and when we do talk about automation, or in the case of Long Beach Container Terminal semi-automation, we have that discussion as a stakeholder group, a collaborative effort.
Automation at seaports is not an all or nothing proposition. Loading and offloading ships and moving cargo from one form of transportation to another involves many complex steps, some of which are more readily automated than others, and some of which don't lend themselves to automation at all, given current technology.
The main benefit of automation, and the reason that it is the future, and the reason that you see the most efficient ports in the world automating operations more and more, is that it sits very well with digitization. So it's an important part of the technical foundation for interoperable data, sharing of data between different stakeholders, sharing of good quality data, so that action can be taken where necessary to drive efficiency and improve efficiency of port operations.
Automation is far from the only way that ports like Long Beach are seeking to improve efficiency. Indeed, it may not even be the best way. A better approach may be to get more productivity from the system the way it's now configured, particularly by extending the hours the port operates.
One of the things that I was very vocal about is how we move to 24/7 operations. Now, we're not working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week anytime soon. Imagine if you told the American consumer you can only fly during the week and the airports were closed on weekends, or you can only fly between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. I mean, imagine what the airport bottleneck would be like. So I think the same emphasis needs to be put in terms of how we move cargo.
Another route to improved efficiency is rail. One train can carry 750 trucks worth of cargo. And earlier this year, Long Beach broke ground on a $1.5 billion expansion of its rail yard that will triple the amount of cargo it can handle annually. John Gabriel is Group President for Consumer Products at BNSF, one of the two railroads servicing Long Beach.
October of 2024 was the biggest single month moving intermodal that we've had as BNSF Railway. Tying that back to the ports, this year it's on a record pace for the most ship-to-train movements that we've done. It's the fastest we've ever gotten to 1 million containers loaded onto trains and departed out of the ports of LA and Long Beach. And I would certainly say that's a testament to, the investments we've made. Again, we've invested in tracks, facilities, more than $2.5 billion over the last 5 years. I think it's a testament to the collaboration we have with the ports of LA and Long Beach and the investments they've made. That's so important right now. Right now, we're handling more volume than we were post-supply chain crisis, where we saw the huge uptick in consumer demand, post-pandemic. And we're doing it about 50% faster from ship to train, and ultimately the ship to end destination across our intermodal network is about 75% faster than it was from a transit perspective back in 2022. And really, I would say the entire supply chain and all stakeholders have really stepped up, and it's really been a great demonstration of capacity and supply chain resiliency for all the goods moving through the West Coast.
Containers in Rotterdam are only 33% of the total cargo throughput. The major cargo, nearly 50%, is liquid bulk.
Half a world away, Hanna Stelzel is working on maximizing efficiency in Rotterdam, where she's the director of containers. It's the world's 10th busiest port and ranks 91st in the World Bank's efficiency index. As with Long Beach, Rotterdam is facing increasing demand.
We're expanding our container capacity. We do know from research that the container business in Europe will be growing. Actually, it will be growing all over the world. That has to do with containerization, that has to do with a growing middle class. And in order to prepare for that growth and to participate in that growth, we had decided to invest into our infrastructure.
Rotterdam is a leading port in a new system called Gemini, involving shipping companies Hapag-Lloyd and Maersk.
The trends that we see is that transshipment volumes are growing. That has to do, for example, with the fact that we have hub and spoke concepts that are being introduced. Maersk, together with Hapag-Lloyd, introduced the Gemini concept.
The Gemini project features a series of hub ports around the world that handle the bulk of the cargo. Containers are then immediately loaded onto smaller ships destined for spoke ports dotted all over the world. Central to the project in Rotterdam is APM, which bills itself as the most advanced, most fully automated terminal in the world. Its CEO is Harold Kunst.
The Gemini approach is different than the traditional shipping line approach we took for many decades. With the hub structure integrated into the network of the 5 hubs in the east-west approach from the trade, is that we are able to enable the ships to be 9 days earlier from Far East into Europe.
Ports like Rotterdam in Europe and Long Beach in California are seeing greater demand than ever for cargo handling and are investing and innovating to keep up with what's coming their way. So why is it that they still lag so far behind their counterparts in Asia, in the Middle East, and even in Latin America? Why is it that it takes 2 or 3 times as long to move a container at a U.S. port than it does in China? It turns out that there are several reasons. First and most basic is that 24/7 schedule that Cordero is pushing for at Long Beach, but that hasn't yet been accomplished.
After 9 months in the year 2024, because of expanded hours of operation, which commenced with the 24/7 conversation. Again, are we 24/7 today? No. Have we taken incremental steps to expand operation hours? Yes. That's a big reason why we don't have congestion and bottlenecks at the Port of Long Beach, because our terminals have been able to work with us in making sure that we use night gates, we use early morning gates, we use weekend hours in times that we have historic volume, which is what we have done. So I think, again, we'll get there.
Even if Long Beach were up and running all the time, it would be very difficult for it to approach the efficiency level of some major ports because of where it fits in the supply chain. Goods coming into Singapore or Oman, for example, are transferred from one ship to another, rather than being moved overland by train or truck for distribution in the United States.
We're not a transshipment port. I mean, some of the larger ports that you look at, for example, Singapore, they are a transshipment port. They always have been and they always will.
And finally, there is the question of automation, something that others make more use of than the U.S. But as much as automation promises to be an answer to so many prayers for greater efficiency, first, it comes with a price, quite literally, in the investment it requires, with the associated questions of where the capital will come from and whether it will earn the return on investment normally required.
There's about 1,200 legitimate container terminals throughout the world. Only about 4% are automated. So the challenge with any type of transformation of technology is a costly endeavor. So from a private sector perspective, what's the return on investment? I think that question is probably going to be more challenging moving forward, because obviously none of this happens unless there's private sector investment.
In the United States, it's not just a question of the capital investment and return. Automation also has potentially substantial effects on employment, which led 47,000 members of the Longshoremen's Union to go on a 3-day strike in U.S. ports on the eastern seaboard and Gulf Coast in October, something Cordero on the West Coast is very aware of.
For a port like Long Beach, who are public ports, we need to take into account the social impacts that has. I think that at the Port of Long Beach, we're proud about the footprint that we have in terms of job production. 535,000 at the local level. At the state level, 704,000 plus jobs directly and indirectly as a result of the Port of Long Beach. And at a national level, the number is like 2.6 million. So we're talking earlier about the great economy that we have, our dependency of our GDP based on consumer spending. Robots don't spend money. Consumers do. So that's the conversation that I haven't really heard amplified, because for us, it's very important to keep labor in place. Because hypothetically, you eliminate labor, what are you doing to the economy and spending in terms of consumer spending?